Nate Diaz says nobody cares about who the welterweight champion is in the UFC. He says it's about buzz and who's popping and who's doing something right. Right now, there's nobody doing anything in the UFC. Who's the champion right now at 170? It's Bilal Muhammad. But see, exactly, he says. That's what I'm saying. Why would I go back to the UFC right now to fight who? I'm the champion as far as that's concerned. So he's talking about like the popularity championship, That's what he's talking about. And I guess at the end of the day, that's kind of what the sport has become. The sport has forgotten the days where it's like who actually is the best at it, who's the star, right? It's the best at it. Instead of that, it's who's more marketable, who trends more on social media, and that's 100% Nate Diaz, right? If you do a Nate Diaz and Nelk Boys interview, just for example, the Nate Diaz interview will get more views than the Bilal Muhammad interview would. As a matter of fact, I don't even think Bilal Muhammad would be on them. I think he has like one appearance. I could be wrong. But, you know, it's just not it. Bilal Muhammad is known for what he does in the cage, not for his personality. Nate Diaz is known for what he does in the cage too, but his personality takes him to a level to where he could even be mentioned in the same sentence as a champion like Bilal Muhammad, and why Bilal Muhammad would even probably welcome that fight. I wouldn't be surprised if Bilal Muhammad took that fight. Why wouldn't Bilal Muhammad take that fight? Bilal Muhammad most likely wins that fight, especially with his style. Do I think he finishes Nate Diaz? No, I don't. I think he probably goes 5 rounds with him the same way most people do with Nate. A lot of people don't finish Nate. Masvidal did, but Masvidal had a different set of skills than Bilal Muhammad. Bilal Muhammad, I don't see him landing anything big or significant on Nate Diaz. I do see him, however, wrestling him for 5 rounds, avoiding submission attempts, whatever. Maybe he gets hit a couple times. Maybe Nate has a moment. Nate had a moment against Leon Edwards. He rocked Leon and decided to just point and laugh at him. But that's what makes Nate Diaz Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz is someone who shows you how to use your personality. If you're interested in going that route, the entertainment route of the sport, you know, look to Nate Diaz and look to not replicate, but, try to make something of your own from what he does. Learn from what he does and add it to your own stuff. Whereas Bilal Muhammad, that's a guy that you could learn from actually like watching the footage. You're actually watching tape, and you know you're seeing the way he mixes it up, the way he the techniques behind it. Whereas Nate, it's like, yeah, you could look at Nate's 1-2 for sure. You could look at his submission attempt, sure, but other than that, he's not some dominant fighter. He's just not. So it's not like you're looking to him as some, like, I don't think anybody goes, I want to be like Nate Diaz in my fighting career. I think they more so think I want to be like George St. Pierre. I want to be like Anderson Silva, you know. Even with that said, definitely nobody says I want to be like Bilal Muhammad. But the like I say that, but I'm also wrong, because ultimately, what is Bilal Muhammad? He's the UFC champion. So even though you may not like his style, even though you may not like watching him and things like that, he is the UFC champion. And you have to give credit for him reaching the pinnacle of the sport. I'm sorry, but as great and fun moments as Nate Diaz rocking Leon Edwards and pointing at him, and, as great as that moment was, Nate can't call himself a champion. Nate can't even call himself the BMF champion. He lost that to Masvidal. So it's just different levels to this, and it depends how you look at it. In terms of making money, Nate Diaz is great. Nate Diaz is a star. Nate Diaz is someone who's popping, as he puts it, who's got buzz behind him, as he says. But he's not someone who's going to go out there, win a championship, defend it multiple times. He's not of that ilk. And, you kind of got to ask yourself, like, what are we doing here? Are we prioritizing sport, or are we prioritizing entertainment? And in 2025, I'll say Nate Diaz is right, because That's what the UFC prioritizes, is entertainment, you know? They don't prioritize sport. We haven't seen that in a while. Look at Ankalaev versus Pereira. They were hoping and praying, and oh my God, do we really have to give this guy a title shot? They folded. They finally gave in. They gave him a title shot. They said, sorry, Pereira, we held your hand for as long as we could, giving you all these strikers and keeping you away from middleweight wrestlers when you were on the come up. You never had to fight Derek Brunson. You never had to fight Marvin Vettori. You never had to fight anybody who could wrestle at middleweight. So, but now we can't. He's right there. He keeps winning. Ankalaev. It's just one of those things. That's what happens when entertainment meets sport, When the guy who you want to win because he's going to make you more money, Alex Pereira, loses because the guy that he's fighting don't care about being a personality. He don't care about Shema. He don't care about being on mad interviews and things like that. He does it because, his management books it for him or whatever, but he worried about being champion of sport, UFC champion, getting, that Medal of Honor he got in his country, like that. It's a different culture. It's just a different thing, It is what it is. The truth lies somewhere in the middle. Nate Diaz's perspective is one that prioritizes the business sense of the sport, the entertainment value of the sport, things like that. And ultimately, that's kind of what keeps the sport alive, right? If every champion was like Bilal Muhammad since the beginning of time, I don't think the UFC is around today, right? I mean, let's think about it. If every champion was some boring guy that nobody wanted to watch, I don't think anybody would watch. You need guys like Chuck Liddell rocking blue shorts going out there and knocking people's heads off. You need Tito Ortiz with the fire flame shorts slamming people and knocking them out cold when they hit the floor, It's just, you need guys like Brock Lesnar coming in. You need Conor McGregor's, Ronda Rousey's. You need these people. And then you could have the people like, a George St. Pierre, who is a great champion, probably my favorite of all time, and someone who wasn't always in the most entertaining of fights, but he was someone that was a true sportsman, and when you were watching him, you were watching the pinnacle of the sport. Maybe not the pinnacle of the entertainment value, but you were watching the pinnacle of the sport, and, really top class, top level of MMA skills and techniques and all these things. That's what you were watching when you watch guys like Demetrius Johnson, George St. Pierre, even guys like Anderson Silva. But Anderson Silva also brought the entertainment. He also brought with the matrix moves, with the front kicks, with the buzzer beating triangles. You know what I'm saying? Like, Anderson Silva brought both to the sport. So that's ideally what you want. You want someone to be pinnacle of the sport and entertainment wise, but it is what it is. It's a mixed bag. That's life, right? It's like a box of chocolates, as Mr. Forrest Gump says, so, or at least what his mama said. So that's pretty much it on this one, man. Where do you stand? Do you think that this should be? Do you side with Nate? Do you think it's about buzz and who's popping? And who's doing something right? I mean, in my opinion, Bilal Muhammad's doing something right because he got gold around his waist. You know what I mean? Like, he the champion, so he's clearly doing something right. But Nate's doing something right, too. He dominates headlines. He's always talked about. If he wants to be talked about, if he does an interview, it gets mentioned. It goes around. People notice. So, where do you stand? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Whether you agree, disagree, does not matter. Just join the discussion, follow for more, and of course, leave a like if you enjoyed the time spent. Thank you. You are all appreciated.